Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Writers Podcast. There they are, Phil Stacy, Matt Williams of the Salem News, Nick Giannino, Gloucester Times. We're talking North Shore sports. And gentlemen, I'm going to ask you guys to give us what a team that you think is kind of hot heading into the playoffs. And I don't mean statistically necessarily, but obviously statistics will be a piece of it. But somebody could argue with us and find a hotter team running into the playoffs. But what team might you select? I'll make myself go first here, and I'm just going to pull out the Masco girls basketball team. Nothing scientific on that. They just seem to be closing out the second half of the year strong. And so I'm just going to go with them as they get ready for the playoffs. But Matt Williams, why don't I start with you here? We'll go around.
Well, I got two. I got the Marblehead boys hockey team. I like
Yeah.
them. They're 10-1-1 in their last 11 games. They won their division of the Newburyport Bank tournament. Right going into the postseason. Defeated Triton, which is a pretty good team there in the finals, and so I like that Headers team, what they've been able to do to earn a half decent seed after starting out really poor. Again, 10-1-1 in their last 12. That's pretty hot. And we'll get into it later on, but they're kind of stacked in there with a lot of local teams in that top sort of 10, top sort of 13 in Division 3. That includes Essex Tech and Danvers and Linfield. So we got a little bit of North Shore flavor there, but I like the way Marblehead is playing right now, certainly. And the other team I would throw out there is Peabody boys basketball. I mean, 18-2, you win 18 out of 20. That's pretty. They've been pretty consistent, but I would say that's pretty hot. I mean, they lost the fifth game of the year, so that makes them 15-1 in their last 16. And I'm not sure exactly what the winning streak is going into the tournament. I'll have to look that up before we cover the game tomorrow, but I want to say it's like 8 or 9 games in a row that they've won going into the tournament, or maybe 7, something like that. So I certainly like the way that they're playing going into the playoffs too. So those two are two that come to mind for me.
No, those are great ones. And who would have thought Marblehead boys hockey would be where they are at right now after looking at their first 10 games of the season for sure. Fantastic. Phil, he probably stole one on you, I think. Did he?
That's all right. We have a few here. Tonight, Beverly girls basketball, they have a preliminary round game at Peabody. A lot of local interest in that. They've won 5 in a row heading into the playoffs. Coming off a couple of strong non-league wins. They beat Triton last time out. They beat Amesbury earlier than that, I know. They had a good battle with Bill Ricker, which they lost, but they played well during that game. So that was a nice test for Beverly. Certainly going to be difficult going into Peabody and beating them there. They split 2 matchups during the regular season, but they are hot going into the playoffs. Essex Tech hockey playing very, very well. Same situation as Marblehead, same Division 3. They're also a high seed. They've won 6 out of 7, with the only loss there being an overtime loss to Linfield, which is also a high seed in Division 3. So they could see them at some point down the road. But the Hawks are playing very, very well. They're getting great defense. They're getting timely scoring. And Brady Leonard, junior center, is 3 points away from 100 for his career. So that could be upcoming in the playoffs. And it'd be foolish not to say that St. John's Prep isn't playing well. Hockey-wise, they've won 5 in a row after a little 2-game hiccup end of January, beginning of February. I think the last 2 games have really righted the ship for them. Overtime win over St. John's and Shrewsbury, and then a real good 3-1 win down to a very good Franklin team on the road to close out the regular season. So they're number 1 in Division 1, 17-3. They had an earlier, I think it was a 12-game unbeaten streak, a 12-game winning streak, I want to say. They don't have any ties this year, before suffering 2 losses, but then bouncing back with 5 wins. So they're another team that is pretty hot heading into the postseason.
Good stuff. Nick Giannino, what do you have for us from the Cape Ann area?
Yeah, well, I think the obvious one is Manchester Essex boys basketball, right? I don't know if I'd call them hot. They're just really good. They won 19 games out of 20. Their only loss was to Burke on the road, who actually ended up being the 6th seed in Division 4, and Manchester grabbed number 5. So they won't see each other unless they face off in the state championship. So I like Manchester to make a deep run. They're a really good team. Obviously, the two-headed monster there with Cade First and Eddie Herreyes. Not a lot of duos like that in the state, let alone Division 4. So they're going to be tough to beat. They're going to have a home game on Friday at 6:30 against the winner of Frontier Regional in Madison Park. And then after that, it gets a little interesting, right? They might have to go against number 12, Tingsboro, who was 12-8, but play a completely different schedule. No common opponents there. You know, they play a tough schedule. So that's going to be a team that's battle tested. But nice for the Hornets to get that number 5 seed and at least have two first two home games in their own building. So yeah, I like the Hornets a lot. And then how about Gloucester hockey? I think you know, they were playing really well at the beginning of the season, kind of had some injuries, had their issues in the meat of their schedule there with some losses. I think they might have fell below 500 at one point, if not right at 500.
I think they were right at 500, yeah.
Right at 500. And then they closed the season out with a couple wins, you know, and a good result against Winthrop, the top team in the conference there. They tied them, then they beat Danvers, they beat Swampscott to close out the season. So 10-win season for them, 10-8-2. They're going to also be hosting a playoff game. Let me just bring up the bracket here. In Division 2, the boys, so they got number 12 seed, and they're going to be playing Walpole this Wednesday at 6 o'clock, the number 21 seed Walpole. So I like Gloucester. I think they're probably one of the more talented teams in Division 2. I know their rankings number 12, but they can play with any of these teams, right? And they could have a chance to rematch Newburyport in the second round. Newburyport got the number 5 seed. That's a team they beat at home earlier this season. I think it was a 5-2 game. I was over there. It was closer than the final score suggests, but obviously Newburyport, a very good team as well, and they could see each other, you know, in the second round of Division 2 up at the Graf Rink. But yeah, I like the way Gloucester's playing. They're healthy. Colby Jewell's back. He's playing really well. Brett Cunningham, those two play really well off each other. Phil, they used 2 goaltenders, right? Riley DeHaan and Nick Tarantino, who both have had terrific seasons. I mean, we were looking at some of the final regular season numbers. They're almost identical for those 2 goalies.
Yeah, they are. And, you know, it'd be interesting to ask. I haven't had a chance to talk to Coach Gary since the pairings were announced, but is he going to ride one guy? Is he going to keep going, you know, with the rotation he's used pretty much all year? One guy plays, next guy plays, that kind of thing. You know, tough question, wrong answer, and you're out of the playoffs. But if it's worked all year, do you go away from it? You know, if the 2 goalies are comfortable with it, the team is used to it, you know. So, I mean, that's an internal question they'll have to answer. But just speaking to your point about how they hit a dip there, I think a lot of that, it's not coincidental that when Colby Jewell went out of the lineup with his injury, Gloucester suffered a little bit, certainly offensively and on the scoreboard as well. And since his return a few games ago, he's picked right up where he left off. He had that 5-point game I think we mentioned against Danvers, and the team's been winning too. So it's a pretty nice parallel there for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen them play some really good hockey. I've seen them have some tough losses. So it's just going to be a matter of what team shows up, but they certainly have talent to make a little run here.
I'll throw one other team in there, Fenwick girls basketball, albeit they're not in the playoffs, but they've closed out the season pretty strongly, I think, as well, with winning that Comcast tournament, finishing the year at 17-3. But obviously, as we know, with MIAA sanctions, none of the Fenwick teams able to participate in the MIAA playoffs this year. Guys, I
don't know you to be a cruel man, Bill, but that was kind of cold saying that. You know, I mean, we're talking about playoff teams and these poor I mean, let's be honest, that's a state championship team. That's they're in the playoffs. They're automatically the favorite to win Division 2. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
No, I don't mean to be cruel. I meant to be. It's just tough. I mean, you know what I'm doing.
I do. I just like to.
You're making sport of me, and I appreciate it.
I was, making sport of you. There you go.
You know, speaking of the playoffs, I gotta admit, I was surprised. You probably were not, but in Division 1 boys basketball, the top seeded North Shore team is St. John's Prep with a 6-14 record, ranked number 23. That puts them ahead of Lynn English. That puts them ahead of Peabody. and Everett and Beverly. I guess no surprise there, but even a surprise there, to be quite honest with you. I was just surprised. Strength of schedule, I get it, and I'm fine with that. And they'll probably win tonight. The prep basketball team, who knows? But they got a home game, but that'll be an interesting look, or kind of assessment of the power rankings, if you will, to have the prep basketball team number 23 with a losing record hosting a game tonight.
It's a good point you make
I
about
don't know if they deserve that seeding. I understand, like you said, the strength of schedule, and we talked about it. If St. John's Prep was in a different conference, say they were in the NEC, they'd be one of the better teams in the NEC. They still are. They still have some solid talent, I guess you could say, and they play hard. They've gotten some good wins. But again, their schedule is a monster. I mean, they're playing some of the best teams in the state night in and night out. I look at a game like they played Newburyport, right? Who I consider a very strong team, one of the best teams in the Cal. They beat them by double digits. So they're better than you think. They're better than the 6 wins would suggest. But yeah, it's a little tough when you got a Peabody team that went 18-2 and rolled through their schedule, and they're below St. John's Prep in the rankings. I guess that's just,
and I get it. I get it. I'm not saying I'm not disparaging the prep at all, and that may prove to be absolutely correct. I'm just saying I was just surprised. That's all. I mean, I was, but not to I was even surprised they were in the playoffs, to be quite honest with you. And I don't mean that disparagingly, but anyway, good luck to them. I hope.
It's a really
totally
good point.
right, Nick, on that. They're not a bad team compared to. That's a monster leagues. That's a tough schedule. I mean,
right. I mean,
half
they've
a
had.
conference.
I'm just looking at their schedule. They've beaten teams like Methuen, who's had a solid season. St. Mary's. They lost to Andover, one of the best teams in the state, by 9 points. They beat Newburyport. I know they had another big conference where they beat BC High, St. John's. So I mean, they got some good wins, and they closed out the season with a win, right? Didn't they play what was it, Wachusett? Well, I'm not sure. I don't know much about them, but at least they got a win coming in. I think they would probably have the same record, or maybe they've had 5 wins last year. And I remember they lost at home to Cambridge. So anything can happen, but I don't know. Maybe the ranking's a little bit too high, but they are better than the record would suggest.
Right.
I think it's a good point Bill makes about Lynn English. I mean, that's a storied basketball program. I didn't realize they were, you say what I mean, Peabody boys, the NEC's down because they don't have English and classical. They didn't play many teams outside of their conference, but I mean, even Lynn English below a 6-win team, that seems off to me. I would like to see some sort of a minimum like they have in football, whether it's 300 or 333. You can kind of pick and choose, but those would be my 2 numbers. If you don't win 30% or 33%, get out. That's my opinion. Because I think the power rankings are great for determining the difference between teams that have, comparable number of wins. But if you're talking about 3 times as many wins, I mean, to me, that's just a little bit crazy. I mean, if a 200 or 250 football team can't get in, then we should apply that same rule across the board. And I think 300 or 333 is a pretty fair place to go with that. Then if you go 8-12 or 9-11, you can get in. But to me, if you're below a third, have you really earned it? That's what I would do. But
it's just
nobody's asking what I think. So
no, it's not normal for us too, right? We're so used to get the 500 record and get in. This is still new to everyone. So the MIAA still has to definitely work out some kinks with the power rating system, and I don't know what the solution is, but yeah, I mean, it was always, when I was in high school, you got to get that 10th win, right? You got to get to 500 to get in or bust. And I don't know if they should change it to, like you said, maybe you need to win 7 or 8 games at least to make it. But yeah, it's interesting.
I'm not even making that point, in the sense, I don't disagree with you guys, but I'm not even making that point. If power strength of schedule says they should be in there, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? And then maybe they'll probably win tonight. We're just talking about the prep here, but I just think it was a surprise to me. Bill?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think a league like the Catholic Conference, it's almost impossible not to qualify for a tournament like this just because of the strength of schedule you play. The record is probably not indicative, but I would push back a little bit, Nick. And hey, I fully admit you know more about the high school basketball scene than I do. But having said that, would they really like automatically be one of the best teams in the NEC? I mean, I'm not saying that it's not a good program and they don't play a tough schedule, but I don't think of, say, St. John's Prep basketball on the same level that I do like lacrosse or football or
No,
hockey, in terms of the talent level they have, where if you put any one of those teams in the Northeastern Conference, they literally might not ever get scored upon.
Yeah.
Whereas like in basketball, I would like to think that, Peabody or Beverly or Marblehead or Salem would certainly play with them. Those would not be gimme wins by any stretch. I mean, they
no,
would
I
competitive
agree.
games, right?
I agree. And I wish they would play more of those teams, right? I can remember in past years where Marblehead has gone over to St. John's Prep and gave them a really good game, or like a Salem team playing them. So yeah, I'm not saying they would go undefeated in the conference and be the outright winner or anything like that, but they'd still be one of the stronger teams. And you obviously have it.
Yeah, okay, so
more kids.
stronger. Yeah, I'm not saying that they're a 6-14 team in the conference by any stretch, but I don't think they're automatically 18-2 either.
No, I'm some of those teams could definitely beat them. Absolutely.
I don't want to
say this, having not seen St. John's Prep. I'm not casting dispersions on them or anything like that. It just seems to me that the gap is much tighter in that sport if you're comparing apples to oranges than it is in, like I said, a soccer or
Absolutely,
lacrosse or
yeah.
something like that.
Absolutely. I would agree with that.
All right, I'm sorry, I got to look at the clock here. Okay. So gentlemen, we want to touch on a few things that happened over the weekend.
What is the clock in that bedroom, by the way? Is it like a choo-choo clock or is it
this one up here?
a Barney clock or what is it? Yeah.
No, not it's just a plain blue. It looks like it'd be something you would find in a kitchen, actually.
Okay. Well, you should tell the people that watch the podcast, not just listen to it, but where you're broadcasting from today, because this is
we're at
special
my
location for you.
I'm at my grandson's in his bedroom here. He's back in school, but we've been watching these him and his sister the last week or so. But we've been traveling around. But we're in Brooklyn right now. To
I
be
was going to
honest
say
with
you are dedicated. You're doing this on the road. This is
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah. That's right. Dedicated, sure. Let's go with that.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. All right. So we can't touch on all the sports in the playoffs. It's so early and so on. Just, is there anything that you guys are looking at before we go back and look at a couple of notes from this past weekend? Anything we should be aware of moving forward? We got hockey and basketball pairings. You guys mentioned that Peabody Beverly girls hoops game tonight. We mentioned the prep, obviously. Sorry about that, Coach Clay, but we did mention that. But good luck tonight. I mean,
Yeah, he's doing a great
absolutely.
job over there.
We hope they go
Dave,
on a long run. That would be fantastic.
no, I agree. I mean, I think I think in the old way there were so many teams that would get in that wouldn't be good, and we'd have this problem where let's use Northeast Conference for an example. They got their 10 wins, but they really weren't that good. You know what I'm saying? And you got teams like, in this case, this year's prep team, it's much better than a 10-win Northeast Conference team, possibly. Different leagues and so on. And you got let's not go into that now. We've covered that, but
yeah.
What should we be looking for this week for girls? We got girls hockey still to come. And by the way, Willie, you were mentioning last week that Winthrop and Peabody are on different sides of the bracket this year in girls hockey. So that's a good sign, possibly. Right? I believe that's right. I thought I looked at that.
Well, St. Mary's, I don't know where Winthrop is, to tell you the
okay.
truth.
Winthrop and Peabody
St.
are
Mary's is on the other side for once, but the Tanners are going to have to hit the road for the second round, so that's not going to be necessarily great for them. They didn't get a great draw, but I mean, beggars can't be choosers. I think they're a team that when they play their game, they can beat anybody in the state. They're 5 goals away from an undefeated season, right? But they also lost those games, right? So the margin of victory, yeah, you get a few points for losing close, but obviously not enough to keep them at home. So we'll see. I mean, it's up to that team to decide how they want to play it. If they play their game and do their thing, they're going to be pretty good. If they play like they're happy to be there and not desperate and not like the hair's on fire, then they're going to be going home. So I think that's really for them. I'd like to see them embrace that challenge. Who cares about the seed? We're going to have to play a good team at some point, whether it's ND Hingham or Pope Francis. line them up and let's try to beat them, right? That's the attitude you have to take. Beverly, I don't dislike their draw. You know, the Panthers are a pretty good team. I've been saying that all year. I really like the way they defend. Yeah, they've got really good shot blockers all over the ice. They've got good scorers. They're a lot deeper team now that Brady Arnold is healthy. They go to Plymouth on Thursday, which is a long ride. But I will say Bishop Fenwick went down there and won a game last year in the state tournament, right? So that just tells you that, you know, it's doable, right? Like it's not like a juggernaut down there. And should Beverly win, they would have a shorter ride in the second round, most likely going to Burlington. So I like, you know, I think I said it last year. I expected or hoped that Beverly would win their first playoff game in 6 years, and now it's been 7 years. So I like their chances of having a happy bus ride home from the Cape on Thursday. So those are kind of the two girls hockey storylines that we have going. Nick, I don't know if you want to touch on Gloucester.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously a tough draw for them, right? They had a phenomenal season. Picked up what, 13 wins, I think it was. Yeah, 13, 5-2. They get the number 17 seed out of 32 teams, right smack dab in the middle. You know, that I think it should be a good game against Walpole. Willie, I don't know how much you know about them, but they got to go on the road on Wednesday to play Walpole, and if they're able to pull that one out, they're probably going to get the top seed in Duxbury in the next round. So obviously a tough draw for them, but just to have the season that they've had and build this program back up and get into the playoffs, that's an accomplishment in itself. And we'll see. I mean, they're obviously pretty talented. 13 wins doesn't just happen, right? They've been scoring the puck and, you know, got a strong defense. So anything can happen, but that is tough to see that you have the best season in probably over 20 years, and you do have to likely take on the top seed in Duxbury in the second round.
It's really tough. I mean, Gloucester was in the top 16 all year long. Peabody was in the top 8 all year long. Beverly was right on the bubble of the 16 all year long, and all three dropped out in the final week.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is the really long losing streak that Masco and Marblehead ended the season on.
Yeah.
It kind of just dragged everybody down. So if the ADs out there are listening, I think it's time for there to be two divisions in the girls hockey to open up some more non-league opportunities for these teams. You know, I'd like to see a structure where maybe you have 13 league games instead of 16 to give just a little bit more opportunity. I mean, Beverly's 4 non-league games this year, the rankings were 2, 6, 8, and 15. So they're doing everything they can schedule-wise to help their power rating. You can't blame them. They just need more opportunities. So I would like to see that. I think going forward, a two-division structure like we see in boys hockey and football and everything else to give these teams, you know, a couple more non-league games to help the power rankings.
Yeah.
I want to correct you, Willie, on one word you mispronounced about 3 minutes ago. I believe you meant challenge.
Challenge, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
The
thank you.
challenge,
Yeah,
always.
challenge, yes. On the boys hockey end of things, a couple of matchups I'm looking at that look pretty good. Well, actually, one boys hockey and one boys basketball, I would say. This potential for a second round Danvers at Linfield matchup is pretty juicy, I would say. Danvers welcomes in East Longmeadow Thursday night over to Bork Arena. Should be a good matchup for them. Again, they're another team that was a little bit lower in the seedings than I thought they'd be. I was thinking they might be able to sneak into the top 10 with the end of result season that they had. But you know, that didn't work out, and hey, that's fine. You play the hand that you dealt, so to speak. So they're 13. They're going to take on West Springfield. What did I say? East Longmeadow, West Springfield, 12-8 on Thursday. But that sets up, like I said, a potential pretty good matchup with Linfield over the weekend. That would be over at McVan O'Keefe and Peabody. Linfield, of course, you know, is 10, I should say, only, but they're 10-9-1, but they played a great schedule, and they're ranked 4th for a reason. A very strong team, tends to play their best in the playoffs. So Danvers has got to get by the first round matchup, but that would be a pretty good second round matchup, I'd say. And then Friday night, I'm looking at this Salem High boys basketball game. You know, it's crazy. They're the only team we have. Now, if I'm not mistaken, guys, am I right here? Like, and Nick, I guess this doesn't count Rockport or Manchester, Essex. But if I'm looking at Salem News area teams, really, they're the only team, boys or girls, that has a first round home playoff game. Is that right?
One thing I was just going to mention, Hamilton Wenham boys and girls are playing tonight. They've got a doubleheader there. So they
Preliminary round, though.
Preliminary round. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right. I get you. Yeah. But I just wanted to give a shout out to them.
No, hey, that's
on their
fine.
home games tonight for both those teams that, came on strong, I guess, too, this year. Bill, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Nick.
No,
yeah, go
it's
ahead.
okay. I mean, and where Salem's the 15 seed and East Bridgewater, who's coming into the field house on Friday night, is an 18 seed. That should be one of the better first round matchups, I'm guessing there. East Bridgewater's got 14 wins. Salem's got 13 wins. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know a lot about East Bridgewater, but you win 3/4 of your games, you're pretty good no matter what conference you play in. Salem clearly led by their two standout freshmen, but they're getting some great contributions from seniors like Eddie Butler and the guys on the football team, Corey
That's right.
Grimes and Devin Azuna, and
Rocco.
and the junior, who have that big game experience. So, Salem could go on a little bit of a run, I think, if they get hot in this first game.
Yeah.
Obviously going to win the first one, but I think it's a good team that's had its mettle tested during the season. They've grown and matured over the course of the season. I mean, it's not easy when you're depending on two freshmen to not only start, but I mean, the two leading scorers on the team. And that can be difficult when you have a upperclassman mix or whatever, but they've managed it pretty well over there. So looking forward to see what Tommy Doyle's boys can do. And if I'm not mistaken, Willie, he's made the tournament every year that he's coached, right? Like 21 years or something?
Yeah, all 21. Well, I guess 20 because the no tournament the COVID season, right? But they never missed.
Okay. Well,
I don't know
that's
exactly how
remarkable.
long the streak is, if they missed it, at some point when Wayne was coaching or whatever. But yeah, it's at least 21 years in a row here now.
And I
Well, the
believe
longest
that
that I know of is the Masco girls.
yeah,
Like
39. Yeah.
40 years in a row or something, 39, 40 years in a row. I mean, that's astounding when you
Yeah,
think
it's
about
really good. And to go back to our previous conversation about the minimums,
right.
you
I
got
was
to
going to bring
remember
that
that
up.
for a large stretch of the 80s and 90s to qualify, you had to be 600, not 500.
It'd be 700 for a while.
Yeah, just
Right.
under.
So a lot of the, in the 80s and
70%
90s,
got you in. So like 14-6 was the low water mark to get you into the playoffs.
right.
See,
So
when
a
Nick
lot of
when,
those
when
years.
Nick said that earlier, it reminded me how young he is. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I know.
So that's pretty impressive streak. And Phil, to your point previously, not only is Salem the only team with a home game, they're one of only two teams. We have 14 teams outside of Nick's teams in Gloucester. They have 14 boys and girls basketball teams. Only two of them are actually in the first round. Salem and Masco girls being the other one.
They're down Norwood, right? Yeah.
Which is crazy. I mean, Hamilton Wenham girls have a higher seed than Masco, but there's so many teams in this crazy Division 4 bracket that they have to play a prelim game, which is funny, Masco, geez, I mean, that was Bill's hot team, and they got to go all the way to Norwood, one of the best coaching staffs in the whole state, a state title contender. You almost wonder if they'd be better off getting a lower seed and having a home prelim game so they can say they won a tournament,
Yeah, really.
Speaking of Masco, I just want to mention the Masco boys hockey team too. I feel like they've been kind of like laying in the weeds all season. They're not Winthrop, so they're not at the top, but they're not mid-pack either. Like they've tested themselves with a good non-league schedule. They earned a home playoff game. They're going to be playing late night on Wednesday. I think it's 7:45 up in Haverhill against Hopkinton. And that's another good, it's like the Salem East Bridgewater one we just talked about. That's a 15-18 matchup where the Chieftains are the 15 seed. I think they can score with any team, Bill. It's keeping the puck out of their net, which has been an issue, if that's the right word to say it. And it's funny because they have a good goaltender in Chris Sacco, but they tend to give up a lot of shots, so they need to really limit those shots against, bury the opportunities they get, and then a win on Wednesday night would give them 14 for the season and move them on to the second round. So I find that to be an intriguing game too. Late night game up in Haverhill.
Gentlemen, we have just a few minutes left, but I want you to, Phil, maybe you and Matt can go over a few notes that you guys had in Monday's paper, because you got a lot of stuff from the weekend on some
Yeah.
sports that we haven't touched on here.
Yeah.
But you got a bunch of stuff to share with us, and we should direct people to that Monday paper or to salemnews.com for some of those stories. And maybe Nick has the same thing going on there in the Gloucester for sure. Phil?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was over at the All-State Wrestling Championships on Saturday, and wow, that's a trip. If you've never been to one of those, which I hadn't, there was a whole lot going on over there. You get there and there's 4 matches going on at once. There were like probably 2,500 people there, and they were telling me it was probably double that the day before, the first day of wrestling. Just a crazy scene over there. Some great bouts, good competition for the boys and the girls. We got a couple of all-state champions out of it. Jaden D'Ambrosio of St. John's Prep won at 157. Great match for him. Also, Michael Toppin of Gloucester. He was an all-state champion at 190. His twin brother, Jaden, ironically, won it last year. This year, he was injured in the consolation finals, so he finished 4th. But, his brother got it done. Also beat a taunt wrestler, as Jaden had done last year. So that was kind of a nice symbiotic thing for the two brothers there. So Jaden and Michael with championships there. We had the girls were wrestling there as well. We had Nadia LeBron of Salem. She finished 2nd in her weight class. That was a good match for her. Morgan, I can't pronounce her last name, Nick. I apologize.
I think it's Penimpede.
Penipede, thank you. Morgan
Yeah.
Penipede finished 2nd in her in the championship match, so she had a great run throughout the tournament. We had some 3rd place finishers, some 4th place finishers. I mean, the North Shore was very well represented. It was nice to see too. They honor a lot of coaches for hitting milestone wins, and Manny Costa, who's retiring at St. John's Prep after a career that matches up against anyone. I mean, he has the most all-time wins of any coach, not only from Massachusetts, but New England wrestling history. He's had 40 all-state champions, multiple state championships, numerous, other awards and whatnot. He was honored. So that was nice to see Manny get recognized as well. But it was a great all-around tournament. It's long. I mean, and the people there are, I think, people who are in any sport love it. But I think if you're into wrestling, like, you're really, really into wrestling. And, there were thousands of those people there the other day. It made for a great atmosphere.
And they used the mats, right? The local mats for the.
They
the
did,
local
yeah.
mats.
It's a great point. They used the mats at Salem High. They used them from all the other Northeastern Conference schools. So, like, all the men's championship bouts were held on like a Danvers High mat, for instance, which was kind of cool, I thought.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of athletic trainers. We should always shout them out. I mean, I think of that great series that Willie did just about this time last year, focusing on our athletic trainers from around the North Shore and what they provide and whatnot. And there were quite a few of them there as well, because you obviously need multiple people helping out with little bumps and bruises and injuries, and somebody gets caught or there's blood or whatnot. So they did a great job as well.
You mentioned the high school wrestling. I know I've shared this story before, but many years ago when I was covering BC basketball, I was in Pittsburgh at the time, this time of year, let's say. They had the state titles going on there. And on the front page of the Pittsburgh Gazette, which would be comparable to the Boston Globe for impact in the area, front page high school wrestling on the sports section of the Pittsburgh paper. You know what I mean? It's
Wow.
big out there. You know what I'm saying? So it's big in some places of the country.
I think there are pockets of this state where it's big. If you go up
yeah.
the Merrimack Valley and whatnot. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it has the popularity of hockey or basketball on the North Shore, but the people who wrestle and follow it and their children participate and all, they're into it as much as any parent in any other sport. And for that, I say, God love you. That's fantastic.
No, it's great. It's fantastic. Yeah. Willie, anything you want to add? I think we still have a couple of minutes left here, but that would be it. Just a couple minutes.
Very cool. Well, we got to shout out the Masco gymnastics team. They won the North title, of course. And then the individual North champ was Kaylee Westcott of Danvers, the Danvers Linfield Co-op. I'm not 100% sure if she's from Danvers or from Linfield. So
I
there's
believe
that.
she's a Danvers kid, Willie.
So nice job there. She wins the all around. Danvers as a team was, I think, third or fourth, so they qualify for the state championships as well. So both Masco and Danvers will be in the state championships this coming weekend for gymnastics. And then on the track, we got some champions. Alex Jackson, the crazy thrower from Peabody, wins his first two all-state titles. Had won half dozen Division II state titles, but now wins at the meet of champions in the shot put by about 5 feet. And the weight throw, a new event that they brought in this year, because they're not scoring, the team scoring in the meet of champions. They kind of were able to bring in some different events, and the weight throw was one of them. And he wins the first ever weight throw, and also set a new state record. The state record was about 10 years old, so there are some conferences that do the weight throw. It's kind of like the pole vault, you see it here and there. There is a scholastic weight throw event that takes place a couple of days prior to the meet of champions. So it has existed. Like the record is, was a little bit 10 years old that he broke, but it's nice to see it sort of growing. I mean, this kid is ridiculous. He just got a scholarship offer for football and track from Syracuse. I mean, if Bill O'Brien is watching the podcast, he might want to offer this kid before the Big 12 and schools get involved. I mean, this kid is going to be going to school for free at a big time place, and he might play in the NFL someday. So, if you're buying stock, you probably want to buy stock in Alex Jackson, pretty soon.
Well, on that note, hey, this is one item you will not find next week in the podcast. This is on my grandson's desk over here, but I'm not sure but if you need to hold some papers and pencils and stuff, there you go. One of those. Phil, you probably have a few of those at your house.
They're long boxed up now, but yeah, we certainly had those.
Yeah, but anyways, great stuff, guys, and we'll talk again soon.
Any Dodgers gear there, Bill?
No, not that far from the old stadium though here, but it's not around anymore. But yeah. All right. On that note, from Brooklyn and from points around the North Shore, we'll talk to you again soon.